Welcome to Empower Her, the Hope We Need podcast, where we empower women and support their well being. This space is where we uplift women. We prioritize our well being and share real conversations to help you thrive. I'm your host, Fumike Murunkeji. I am an HR advisor and mental fitness career coach with over 20 years of HR experience. I support immigrant professional women just like you as they navigate challenging careers, multifaceted lives, and moments of transition, especially during moments of transition. So, whether that looks like for you being laid off at work, whether it looks like for you having to resign because of personal reasons, whether it looks like for you having to come back again into the corporate world or the work environment and you're trying to thrive. Whatever that looks like for you, as an immigrant professional woman, I am here for you. And my coaching expertise would support you in getting your feet firmly back on the ground. And remember, together, we build resilience, we restore your balance, and we unlock confidence for both your work and life in general. So if you're ready to explore new possibilities for your career, connect with me for an insightful perspective. Just click the link in the YouTube description or below this episode to schedule a call and for us to connect. And while we're at it, keep tuning in to Empower Her, the Help We Need podcast, which is your community for growth, encouragement, and ambition. Here, you will find the support that you need for the journey ahead. Because you know what? You truly deserve it. I cannot wait to speak with you soon. So stay tuned and enjoy the podcast. Resetting after a hard year. So, as an HR advisor and career fitness coach, my role is to support specifically immigrant professional women to navigate career challenges, to be able to enhance their well-being at work. And especially for women like us that maybe are working in a toxic environment or women that have moved from their home country into a new country, trying to establish themselves, trying to build confidence, trying to articulate, trying to manage the work culture, trying to understand how to maybe sometimes even assert themselves, trying to navigate the political climate, trying to be the authentic person, trying to climb on in the career ladder, trying to be recognized. There's so many issues that we face coming from the known and to somewhat the unknown and thriving and surviving in a foreign country. And this is where I am here to support you through that journey. So when we talk about or open the conversation up for resetting after a hard year, what does that look like? Most times as women, I mean, our cases are different depending on everyone's situation. But resetting after a hard year, especially if you've been followed or you've lost your job, could be very daunting. And resetting after a hard year, when it comes from a career perspective, also could mean that you have had to resign because you had to deal with certain personal issues. I've had women who, because they had to take care of a child, they had to deal with personal situations, have had to leave well-paid jobs to be able to focus on family. And I've had women who had been given the ultimatum that if they don't leave their jobs, they could lose their marriages, and so on and so forth. And there could also be reasons as to caring for the elderly, reasons as to moving to a different country, that many women have to make a decision in terms of family, in terms of work, in terms of, just having to take a pause and just keep things on hold till it's time for them to reconnect and, move ahead with their careers and enhance their career progression. So, coming back from whatever that looks like for you, which has been hard, can be quite daunting. And if you notice during our podcast, we're addressing the questions to someone who's come back from a hard career, who's come back from a hard year, having to navigate from a corporate career into setting up a business of our own and very senior executive at that. So our first question tackled, or we are tackling, connecting with, the real you, giving yourself permission. And for many women, connecting with the real you after a disruption can be very, very difficult. Difficult in the sense that that part of your life was more or less for you an identity. So when you lose that, especially the higher you are on the ladder, it can be very difficult because you more or less are married in a way. You formed an identity with your role, with your position, with your job. And obviously, some of those jobs do come with huge pay, they come with perks, they come with status, they open doors, they open certain doors that typically, you know, you being on your own, those doors would not open. So it's very hard when you have to move out of that persona and then those doors don't open anymore because, as you know, people would obviously tend to ride on your clout, and not necessarily for ill intent, but that's just the way of life. And if they find out that, you don't have that clout, you don't have that ambience anymore, there's a tendency that they stop connecting, they stop reaching out. Ultimately, they stop picking up your calls. And this does have, I wouldn't say irreparable, but it's quite heavy in terms of the impact that it causes people that have just had to transition out of a role to find out that suddenly what they thought they knew is no longer what they know. You know what I'm saying? So it can be hard. And the question of giving yourself permission to connect with yourself can be very theoretical. And, it's like, I hear you, but the ability to be able to do this in a way that you can relate can be difficult. And that's why having a coach helps you to be able to do that in a way that you can actually listen to what works for you. So, in our podcast, we tend to want to connect with leaders and women that have gone through certain experiences so they can relieve the experiences because it kind of makes you more connected when they share the examples and you can relate if you're going through that situation, if you are about to enter into that situation, then there are lessons to learn from this. So I invite you to ensure you connect on this podcast as we listen to our guests who obviously shares her experience through that journey and helps us really understand how she was able to sort of tone things down to connect with herself and give herself permission to thrive. As we move on in the podcast as well, we would connect with the question of the internal pressure that kind of pops up when we go through change. And like I mentioned before, when it comes to that space of identity and you completely not understanding where that or what that looks like for you, this is where you get thoughts and, in terms of your head space. And the feeling of despair, the feeling of failure seems more apparent than any other thing else. And it's interesting because when you lose something, it's not default to go into that space where you're grateful for what you have. The tendency most times is to always look at what you've lost. So those internal pressures, if not well kept in check, may undermine the essence of who you really are. And again, connecting with a coach like myself, and an immigrant woman who obviously I've had experiences in working with women and living those experiences myself in different spaces. There is no better teacher than someone that's gone through that themselves. So having to deal with those internal pressures, to look a certain way, to be a certain way, is can be really hard. And your ability to be able to step back and think about you as opposed to what people would say, what friends would say, becomes really, really very important and becomes really crucial to redirecting what self-development really looks like in this new season. So, as women, we need support, and we need to find the balance, and we need to be able to come to terms and grieve our past rightfully, but more or less settle for what the future holds for us. And while it sounds really very nice to say, the experience can be a bit stretching, but we need to be able to confront our internal bias so that we can move forward. We can navigate our careers in a way that success is defined based off what we are anticipating for next steps. And having someone help you through those moments is it's a game changer. And as we go through the course of the podcast, obviously, we would tackle the question around having to be able to reset, right? And in resetting, the tendency to slow down and be able to shut out all the noises is really important because that's the only way that we can redefine or decide what the next direction looks like. And of course, our guest would walk us through that in terms of how she has been able to reset, and how she had been able to focus on what matters most as opposed to living to the expectations or the perceived expectations of the people that surround her. So it's really important to kind of tune into this because it helps you if you're going through that situation or while going into that situation to be able to understand what reset means and how you're able to redefine that in the new season that you're working into so that you are able to connect the dots in a way that works for you, not with a formula for someone else, but with a formula that is shaped to your being and what, you know, success looks like for you in a sense. So it's what listening to. I honestly encourage you to key in on that and try and understand what reset means and what that looks like. And as we proceed further in the podcast, of course, there is always I use the word wisdom in every season of transition. While apparently it may not look like there is any wisdom in the situation to start with, but if well managed, it gives you a moment to rediscover yourself in ways you could never rediscover yourself if no change occurred. And having to have somebody walk through you in that season to support you again, is a complete game changer. And our guest obviously would share with us what that wisdom looked like for her. Something no earlier success she probably had while she was working and highly placed in a role in that corporate world, what that probably would have looked like when she was transitioning in a form of success compared to what that looks like now when she's not on that corporate ladder, senior position, having the clouds, perks, and whatever. But now, when she's had to slow down and reset, and what that looks like for her from a wisdom perspective in terms of the lessons she learned, which are immensely valuable. And if she didn't have to go through that rough patch, she would never, ever have learned those lessons. So I call them the wisdom in the seasons of change. And I encourage us to deep dive because there's so much to learn from what is shared. And of course, in every transition, there is always an approach that is helpful for us to explore and use. And our guest also further goes on to talk about that. Well, she explains how she assesses what's not working. And in being able to do that, she's able to pick out the things that are working and invest her time and not look over her shoulders anymore, but now move forward and invest that time in activities that bring out the best in her. And when we are going through hard stretches or transitions that are daunting or challenging in our careers, it seems to be the last thing that we want to think about. Activities that drive energy. We actually invest ourselves in activities that drain those energy or the energy we need because we're kind of wanting to use the same formula and approach that worked for us in the past, and we're trying to run with that. But unfortunately, that approach was for a season, a different season. And because you're now in a new season, that same approach, it's not a fit for purpose approach and most likely will not work. So learning to engage in a new way, invest in activities that drive your energy and momentum and mental awareness is so key. And obviously, having found that sweet spot, being able to adapt your work styles, work habits, and changes to fit that new season is really, really crucial. And she takes us through that. She explains, for example, how she's able to tone things down, cut cost, right? And manage things in a reasonable, realistic, and adaptive way. And I think that's something that might interest you. And interestingly, I've worked with my clients to kind of redefine what that looks like for them. Having to be able to face reality and say, you know what, I may not necessarily have to live a certain lifestyle because I don't have the means to sustain it, and just being able to be pragmatic and smart to now redefine what would make sense for you in your new season. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, because this new season does not, you know, position you in a way that you are well paid, doesn't mean that that new season still is not meaningful. But it's just adapting the right strategy in the right way to support and sustain you so you gain momentum and then you can run. So I find that very helpful as well personally. And I feel like this is also would be, absolutely a game changer for you as you listen in to this episode. And of course, working women most likely may also be tuning in and listening to our podcast. And this is good because it helps you hear these stories in a way that makes you take those lessons and run with them and work with them. So you are proactive and you start thinking about plan B. And for women who are like really scared of even navigating plan B and thinking I'm too busy. So for them to start understanding that at some point that business may stall, may stop for whatever reason, and whether that's a forced reason of an organization saying, sorry, we don't need your services anymore, or a reason of illness, or a reason of certain challenges personally, it's always good to be proactive and to plan for slowing down. So where we have women who are struggling and trying to contemplate what that means for them and what plan B could mean for them, I encourage them to listen to this podcast and obviously to lean in, so that they can kind of start reshaping, at least mentally, and start putting those pieces together. And again, this is where I come in. If it's a bit too overwhelming, or there are just so many moving pieces and you're not really sure what the exact plan B could look like, having that conversation, connecting with me would be, I think, the antidote that you need to get yourself started. So, yeah, for every woman listening in, and especially for professional women in the corporate world, this is a topic you don't want to miss. This is a topic that helps you understand how navigating challenges in your career can position you for higher grounds, and what support you can explore in the event that this does happen. You do have support in terms of a coach. And that would be obviously with my support, helping you define your own personalized career roadmap, so that you can be supported in terms of your growth, in terms of your advancement at work. You can be supported in a way that actually feels real for you, not a textbook kind of thing, and is tailored to your situation. So I encourage you to join in on our podcast and, be a part of our community. And if you know someone who's going through a challenging career and you feel like this podcast would really help them, please share it with them. And, spread it abroad, share it with other communities as well, so that we together can be the best version that we have been called to be. I encourage you to continue to stay tuned, and continue to listen to the Help We Need podcast, because this podcast is meant to help you and to support you in your career, and, to give you a booster and a form of encouragement. The same issues we're going through as women, we don't have to do it solo. When we work as a community, when we help one another along, it makes the load lighter and the burden easier. And yeah, that's why we're here. We're here to support you. So I can't wait for you to connect on the podcast. I cannot wait to speak with you if you decide to connect and have that one-on-one where we can walk through what you're going through and what would work best for you. So stay tuned and speak soon.